Hey, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, folks. It's V the Gorilla Economist coming to you live on this edition of Rogue News, and we have with us the man who needs no introduction whatsoever. It's Matthew Arrett, and you can find him over at his Substack as well as CanadianPatriot.com and the Rising Tide Foundation.org. It's .org, right?
.net.
.net. Okay.
Yeah.
Close. And so Matthew's here. He's going to break things down. And folks, I apologize for last week. I've had a little minor surgery. They were implanting the Skynet chip directly into my brain in order for me to interlace fully with Skynet. I am right now a living cyborg, and because of that, I was out for the entire week. And CJ is he's not himself when I'm not around, and I'm not myself when he's not around. So we just didn't have any shows. So now we're back.
this entire program is actually being broadcast directly from your imagination.
CJ's
not actually here. This is
bro. They've upgraded me, man. I'm no longer 56K modem. They implanted a full broadband, 1 gig up, 1 gig down, fiber optic broadband network directly into my neural synapse, and I'm right now communicating with the satellites. Yeah.
Wow, you
are. I'm also mining Bitcoin in my brain as I'm talking to you.
Elon Musk must be so proud.
Elon is. You know,
you're staying relevant.
Yeah, I'm trying, man. You know, I'm trying to save exceptional stand. That's a tough job, dude. Someone's got to do it.
It's quite the sacrifice.
No sacrifice, no victory, as they said in Transformers. Matt, what's going on, man? I mean, the world's crazy. I took a week off trying to recover, and I wake up this morning, and the world's still crazy and it's getting crazier by the minute. UFO. Me and CJ were talking about this before, off the air. UFO disclosures are around the corner. Mass distraction. I mean, there's just so much stuff we can talk about. Meanwhile, there's a lot of junk and jokes. That's what we get in the West, Matt. A lot of junk and a lot of jokes in the West.
Yeah.
And we have an opportunity here to really talk about the land of adults, what people are actually doing right now in places like China and Russia, in the Belt and Road Initiative, the multipolar world. That's the solution. Okay, the solution to the madness that is gripping the West. So I don't know where you want to begin, brother, but let's get into it.
There's so many places to begin. We lost CJ. That's okay. CJ. I'm sure he'll find his way back in. Yeah, there's so many places to begin. And I used to like Star Trek a lot. And as a Next Generation was more my thing than anything else. But I was struck by the fact that, there's something optimistic about the idea of a future society that would be capable of utilizing science technology for the greater good, and really have a whole society that values exploration and discovery, the powers of mind, and it's transcended geopolitics, and it's all great. And there's some people who watch Star Trek and they're like, yeah, that's really inspirational, because but they're actually not talking about the Federation or Picard or anything. They're talking about the Borg. And they're like, yeah, that's the reality that makes me want to wake up in the morning and make the world more Borg-like. And I feel kind of like you have this Borg versus sort of Federation idea of what science, technology, and the human mind is right now, sort of manifesting in a weird way, where the neoliberal order is sort of cannibalizing itself, but it's aspiring to this idealized Borg-like state of transhumanism, integrating with machines, homogenizing everything it comes into contact with, and absorbing it and assimilating it into its essence. And then you have this other multipolar alliance, which is also cherishing science technology, just like Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates say they like science technology, except that the difference is that the application and the idea of what science is and what humans are that create science and advance it are two different universes.
Yeah.
And there you actually have things like, look at Russia, look at China, and look at their energy program. That's all vectored around nuclear progress. Russia and China are co-building some of the biggest, most advanced nuclear reactors in history right now. Big technology shares to Africa as well, things that the West hasn't permitted since John F. Kennedy was killed. China just announced like a world record in high temperature plasmas being produced for like 160 seconds at 2 million degree plasmas inside of a electromagnetic field chamber inside of a tokamak.
You just mentioned the plasma technology. Could you tell the audience and the layperson what that really means? What does it mean in terms of energy production?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, plasma is known as the fourth state of matter because we're all accustomed to interacting with, liquid, solid, or gaseous states. You breathe, ice, it melts. It could become solid when it's ice. It could melt, become water, and you can keep on heating it up and it becomes a steam, a gas. But if you keep on heating that gas up, at a certain point, it becomes so hot that electrons start splitting off and it gets a polarized charge of the gas. That polarized gas can be very much electrified, and you have things like the Earth's environment in space is shaped by things like the ionosphere, which is a plasma. Yeah. It's something which mediates the Earth as it moves around the sun, as the sun moves around the center of the galaxy in a cluster of other galaxies. It's the thing that mediates the dense array of cosmic radiation. So all the time we're saturated, not in empty space between planets, but it's a saturated ocean of plasma and cosmic radiation passing through the biosphere, and it enters in through the Van Allen belts of the Earth. It enters in as it's spinning. You see the effect of that in the aurora borealis, the lights in the north and on the southern hemisphere at the poles, and it passes through the biosphere. It moderates things like cloud formation. Anybody who really wants to look at global warming does not need to look very much at carbon dioxide. That's the least important thing in the mechanism. It's cosmic radiation, which is number one.
But Klaus Schwab told us that we will have to reduce our carbon footprint because if we do not do that, the world will end in 10 years, and we must give up everything and own nothing, and then we will be happy.
Yeah, that's what he says. And what's a big carbon producer? It's human breath, carbon.
That's why Klaus is telling us we must all get into a room and off ourselves using the latest cyanide pill.
Yeah, or we just need a breathing tax, right? Yes. just take shallower breaths, or else you.
Well, that's what they want to do, man. I mean, with carbon dioxide, that's exactly what they want to do. Is a tax on life itself. It's a life driver.
It is.
Yeah. And, you mentioned the plasma things, and one of the questions that we have in the live chat is Crypto Cowboy talking about are the new reactors that are going up within the multipolar world, are they thorium salt reactors? Yeah, man, it's the next generation, in fact, right, Matt? I mean, Matt, you talked about the waste from these next generation thorium reactors that China is developing is like the size of a flea's excrement. Is that what it was, Matt?
Oh man, I think that's a very good apropos metaphor. Yes, no, these molten salt thorium reactors, they're not fusion, but they're amazing. I mean, it's meltdown proof. Does not produce any waste, and what little waste there is being produced, you can reprocess that. And when you look at China, you look at also India, which also has a pretty bold orientation towards building breeder reactors, fast breeder reactors. They actually produce, by the end of their life cycle, more energy, more fuel than they used throughout that cycle. So then you could just take that fuel, because they're closing the cycle. Instead of burying it, they're just reusing it. It's still radioactive. That means it's useful. Yeah. So these new reactors actually employ that. And these are things that we should have had many, many decades ago. I mean, the United States used to be a frontier pioneer in this domain in the 1970s. And then, this logic of dual use came out that, yeah, sure, anything you do that's dangerous like this, or that produces a lot of power like this, like because it produces plutonium, it could also be used for applying it to making a bomb. And so the logic became, well, since you could do both good and bad for it using this technology, we're just going to ban the technology, right? Rather than not funding terrorist organizations to overthrow governments, which is what we chose to do instead, they're like, we're just going to keep funding radical Mujahideen, Khalq, and other terrorist groups and make the world a really dangerous place. And then using that dangerous place that we have now created, we're going to use the argument to say that we can't allow advanced scientific energy like fast breeder reactors or anything else like that to proliferate.
Yeah. This is also why we must eliminate cars, because cars also have dual use. You can drive around in a car, but also it can be used as a weapon. Therefore, we got to ban it. While we're at it, we should also ban butter knives. They have a dual use purpose. Everything has dual use. Hell yeah, it's great. We should just live in a bubble of safety and security.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, ban a rope while you're at it too, right? No, exactly. It doesn't stop. It does not. When you allow that mode of logic to define policy, it doesn't stop. There's no end to it. At some point, they're going to ban fire, except for the elite, who can rent you fire if you want, but you can't own fire.
You will not own fire, and you will be happy. We will sell it to you at 35% premiums.
Yeah. Well, it reminded me of what's his name? Paul Ehrlich, the guy who wrote the population bomb, that book of fake science in 1968. That was sort of the first thing to popularize the idea that human beings were going to massively outpace food production and by the year 2000. So we had to immediately put massive caps globally onto our population. He came out, and by the way, this is the guy who was the mentor of John Holdren, the former science advisor under Obama, who shut down U.S. fusion research in 2011-12 and cut the U.S. off from working with China on space exploration. This is the guy. That's his mentor. I think he's still alive, but he's the guy who came out and said that fusion energy is entirely possible, but allowing humanity to access abundant, cheap, high quality energy is like giving a child, a retarded child, a machine gun. That's what he said.
So, but he, being the enlightened, person with the humanities degree and the political science degree, he could have it. Yeah. But the rest of us, we shouldn't.
You mean he could have the machine gun? Yeah, not the fusion. He doesn't want that even. But yeah, no, exactly. It's complete hypocrisy, and it's very much the Pygmalion effect, right? Of just, if human beings are not acting like the degenerate beasts that we say they must be in order to justify a banning of technological progress, let's encourage and make it more. Let's make them that way, and then once they act that way, then we can now justify the argument that we had set out to justify way at the beginning. So it's complete lying, dishonest way to conduct science. But back to the question on fusion power. This is more than fission, because we're still dealing with the breaking up of heavy isotopes and heavy elements like thorium and plutonium and uranium, which are fissile, but you're breaking them up and you're getting energy out of what was formerly so-called mass, and you can apply that and use that energy in the form of heat. That heat can be used to boil water, that creates steam, that makes turbines move, that creates electricity that you could apply to your grids, right, to sustain an industrial civilization. Now, that is qualitatively not that different from hydro turbines or gas or natural gas power plants, in terms of the fact that you're creating heat, using it to make steam, power turbines, make electricity, right? So it's the same type of mechanism, but the quality of the energy of uranium or thorium is so much denser, more controllable. It's a better quality of energy source that can also be applied without worrying about, well, maybe the wind isn't going to blow, so my wind turbines won't work, or maybe it'll be cloudy for a few weeks, so we won't get solar energy, and so that's not very reliable on many levels. But I think more importantly is to get at and this is what China and Russia are very much committed to. We in the West used to be committed to this, is to get to fusion, where you're taking light elements like isotopes of hydrogen, deuterium, tritium, or helium-3, and fusing them together. And then what happens is that the sum total of the fused of atoms is less in mass than so the total is less than the two were before the fusion reaction happened. Where did that missing mass go? It became energy, a lot of it. And that's something you can then apply with either the mechanisms that we were talking about, boil water, make steam, use turbines, or get to next generation forms of application that, the imagination can go wild with the direct application of millions of degree temperatures. So up until now, it's only been something that we found in the universe. We found it, like I said, organizing the evolution of the biosphere through the ionosphere and the Van Allen belts. We've seen it in the sun. The sun has a multitude of different forms of plasma processes all over the place. The universe is saturated with plasma. But human beings, for the first time very recently, began to find ways of using it, originally for destructive purposes in the form of the hydrogen bomb. But now increasingly, there's a variety of different techniques being used. And China, like I said, their historic breakthrough that they made by allowing, I think it's 160 seconds of 2 million degree heat, is we were able to use very strong magnetic fields and superconductors that keep this plasma from touching any surface, because the problem is it's so hot that as soon as it touches the surface, the device containing it melts down. So you need these electromagnetic fields to keep it in place. They've been using one of the more promising testers is the ITER tokamak. It's like a torus.
Yeah.
And you figure right now it's still using us. We need to input more energy into it than it gives us at this point. But if you can get past the break-even stage, which is where China and Russia are moving towards, and again, there's so many other ways. There's even things like cold fusion that are very interesting, which are producing there's all sorts of tests that have produced interesting effects, even in Toronto. And in Toronto, they have a reactor that's called the Sapphire reactor, creating fusion in a very different way using an electric model of the universe. But the point is, there's so many things that would break us free of the so-called limits to resources, which people like Klaus Schwab and these other neo-Malthusians like Bill Gates and others running the World Economic Forum, they're trying to use these limits as an excuse to get us to accept a willful decarbonization, aka depopulation of the Earth, down to like what computer models that they're using say that the Earth can sustain, which are, I think the consensus is something like 1 billion, maybe 2 billion, but either way, like that's a lot of dead people.
Yeah, I mean, these guys are sick, man.
Yeah,
these guys are sick. I mean, it's. I like somebody within the chat, Stephen Miller. I see what he wrote. He says, "No one in the Western world knows how to do anything except play with keyboards." That's literally what it seems like, man. It's pretty bad. You look at these incredible advancements, and what we have is vaporware. Now, let me ask you. We'll sidetrack a little bit, right? And I want to give an example. I want to, grab some examples here of BS and propaganda and whatnot that we use here in the U.S. that most people are not privy to. In your time, Matt and CJ as well, have you ever seen a weapon system that hasn't been leaked, shown in its full scope years before it even enters service? I mean, when you think about it, right? Next generation fighter aircrafts. I mean, you go back to the 70s, man. You saw the YF-17 and the YF-18, the YF-16s, the YF-15s, the YF-22s, the YF-23s. These were all aircraft that were, contending for that time, the fourth generation and what many people call the fifth generation of fighter technology. In other words, these things were already out in the wild. They were undergoing testing. There's plenty of spy footage of them. And kind of like, you pick up an issue of Motor Trend magazine or Car and Driver, there's the spy shots of the next generation Corvette out there testing. You'd see that, right? But now all of a sudden, man, here's what's funny, right? Here's what's funny. For the first time ever, the U.S. is supposedly working on a sixth generation airplane. There's nothing but artist renditions of this thing all over the place. There's nothing of it. Nothing. No spy shots, nothing being no demonstration models, testing mules, nothing. The U.S. supposedly also working on the next generation bomber, the H-21 Raider, right? The B-21 Raider. There's no mock-up of it, except there's a mock-up of one that it's just basically a reworked B-2, right? And you'll see this again with, the U.S. is working on an M1A2 replacement. This is a tank, a main battle tank. Nothing. It's vaporware. Everywhere is vaporware. But yet, hot on the heels of all this vaporware and nothingness and BS, you'll have stuff like, UFO disclosure is going to be in 2 days, which is nothing but a giant head fake. They're trying to distract you, right?
Yeah. You
compare that to what we're seeing now with some of the hardware that's being rolled out, in the East, and it's not only like rolled out with test mules, man, but they're effective working models, and they're doing it very quickly, very rapidly. They've closed the quantitative gap a long time ago, and now not only have they closed the qualitative gap, but they far exceeded it, man. It's incredible. It's incredible. And so I bring this up as a point that there's nothing in terms of real advanced technology and research that is happening here in this country that has any sort of meaningful advancement for us as the citizens of the Western world. There's literally nothing. I mean, look at the maniacs in Germany. The Green Party is winning parliamentary seats. What do they want to do? They want to shut down further nuclear plants in Germany. Maybe they think that windmills and solar panels are the way to go, right? So they're deindustrializing the West. Like you have that idiot moron who is just an idiot of idiots, probably the most dumbest person I've ever seen in my life. I thought AOC was stupid, but this woman takes the cake. And I'm talking about Kamala Harris, right? The vice president, Kamala Harris. What she said over the weekend, okay, during Memorial Day, to a group of naval officers, telling them what a Marine wants in the field is solar panels instead of batteries. And that they're going to fight climate change. She said that. CJ, could you? I don't know if you could pull that up. CJ, it's on YouTube. Kamala Harris, Marines, batteries, and solar panels. I mean, you got to pull this video up. This is like deranged. Yeah, you know, she's wild, like, you know, the Marine of the future. You know how she just laughs for no reason. Meanwhile, nobody is laughing around, and people are just looking like, "What the hell is this woman saying? She's so weird. She's so strange. What is she talking about?" And you know, the Marine of the future. And then she pauses and laughs and cackles like the cackling hen that she is. Then she continues. She, after she says the word she, to emphasize, you know, girl power, right?
Yeah.
She would probably want, instead of carrying 50 pounds of batteries, how about a rolled up solar panel so she can go out there and effectively tackle climate change?
Wow. Wow. Yeah, no, I mean it's reminiscent of I forgot the name of the ex minister of defense of Britain who had written that report. We talked about it in a recent show, I think a couple of weeks ago, who had written a report just a few months ago saying that in the future, the military of the world are not going to be used the way they have been to defend oil interests or anything. It's going to be to stop nations from using oil. And that's why we're going. So the militaries of the NATO 2030 ideologue sort of scripts are going to be saving the world from climate change, not from terrorism or whatever else. But it's complete.
CJ
weird.
found this. You gotta listen. It? Yeah, okay. Make sure you pucker up, man. This is gonna make you cringe. Go ahead,
sure.
CJ.
Electrical engineers who will soon help convert solar and wind energy into power, convert solar and wind energy into combat power. And just ask any Marine today, would she rather carry 20 pounds of batteries or a rolled up solar panel? And I am positive she will tell you a solar panel, and so would he.
God. Oh.
Yeah, it's really contrived.
Oh,
she's like a flunky from the Obama School of Rhetoric. Just
solar panels.
Yeah. No, it's such fakery. It's so mentally detached. And she's the one also in charge of Space Force now, right?
Yeah, like, she's in charge of Space Force. She's in charge of the border. She's in charge of the energy policy. She's in charge of the foreign policy. She's also a brilliant tactician. On the level of a Zukov. That's how brilliant of a tactician she is. She's managing the 5-dimensional chessboard that is Syria, while confronting the Russians in the Crimea and facing the Chinese in the in the South China Seas. She's incredible. Such a busy schedule. She has time to go to the Naval Academy and talk about giving examples about Marines in a Naval Academy graduation.
God. Well, yeah, I mean, now that the military, I think the 60-day purge has come and gone of all of the potential pro-Trump soldiers who are in the military who might have any sympathies towards conspiracy theorists. So maybe she'll actually have a little bit of an audience now left over who might respond favorably to some of that insanity. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, the way that they're collecting these drones, these human drones who are not interdirected in any way. They're just like walking scripts. There's no human Borgs, I guess is a way to think about it, right? Like these are not, they look kind of like human, but you hear how they compose their thoughts and you realize you're speaking to the exact same program, whether you're talking to a Blinken or a Biden or a Harris or Jens Stoltenberg. It's the same program.
Same program.
So yeah, whereas that's the thing. People like still criticize me because I generally was supportive of Trump, and I'm like, well, you know what? It's because I could see a human being there. Like I could see that it's not a program. There's this thing full of tons of problems, sure, but there's a human, and I can interact with that. I can deal with that. It doesn't obey the programming script that you're going to just feed into it. So, I mean, it's the same thing also with Eric Lander, right? The current science czar of the United States. He's one of the closest associates and friends with John Holdren. They worked together under Obama and Lander. I mean, this guy is a Rhodes Scholar. He's like this mathematician who chose to go into biology and social sciences, and he headed the Human Genome Project. That's at the heart of CRISPR and all of this like transhumanist ideology to try to create a new and better human being for the future. Because it manifests itself in so many different ways. But these people, they don't look at human beings like human beings. He's a mathematician. They look at human beings through the filter of assuming it's all ones and zeros. There's no such thing as justice, the soul. None of these metaphysical ideas have any meaning to a 1-0 binary operating machine, right? So that's the dangerous thing, is that they're looking for the formula. These technocrats, these globalists who are trying to use the terminology of democracy as to justify the overthrow of governments which don't obey their programming, like that, and they're using.
That's what they actually said. They actually said to overthrow governments. This is why the joke, the absolute joke that is the EU has called for regime change in Russia. This is how stupid these idiots are.
Well, and it's just self-cannibalizing. Like, it's so out of whack with the real nature, the real nonlinear qualitative nature of what human beings are, that their ideology is just breaking down in more and more places. You can't even count the cracks anymore. So you hear things like that, where the EU, which is like destroying itself, which is sort of the bastions and role models of this rules-based international order championed by Blinken. It's like they're already, just look at the scandals, right? Like, more evidence is coming out that Denmark, who's part of the European zone, was working with the Five Eyes to spy on all of these different Merkel and different heads of state across Europe, which is now creating a scandal. Because they're like, this hub, this communications hub that they're in geographic possession of. So that's now come out into the surface. There's no trust between each other. They're all backstabbing each other because they're all. I mean, look at Victoria Nuland, right? Like, even back in 2014, she was caught. It's rare in this day and age that you get like empirical smoking gun evidence of that sort. Usually, you have to triangulate to get a sense of the Soros tentacles behind the scenes manipulating things. But sometimes you get lucky, and you got her actual transcript talking to Jeffrey Pyatt, the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, saying who they're going to put into power in the new government that they're regime changing, as she was talking, and saying, like, showing just total disdain for the European Union leaders, like, fuck the EU. So it's just showing you, like, there's no such thing as some sort of a consensus of what the neoliberal order is. What is this abstract thing? All we know is it wants to assimilate everything into NATO, into globalization, into the World Trade Organization, into the Great Reset agenda, everything.
You want to know something that's funny, right? This is the way the West is. The perfect example is the bloody NSA. The bloody NSA, from eyewitness accounts, from whistleblower accounts, have been collecting petaflops and petaflops and petaflops of data. Okay. They've been data dredging every single phone call, text message, every nude, anything you could even think of, right? They've been collecting and collating it all. The fact of the problem they've now confronted with, okay, from many analysts who've looked at this, is these morons sent out to collect everything and scan everything and we can keep dossiers on everyone. They have such a dearth, such a mammoth, gargantuan amount of data. They don't have the computing power now to sift through it.
Yeah,
it's literally so much data they've accumulated. They never thought, hey, we're going to start accumulating data. Okay, what do we do afterwards? I don't know. What do we do? I guess we'll eventually, develop the
technology and the computing efficiency to actually start delving through it. But I don't know.
Yeah,
and it's the same thing that you see here. We're going to create Five Eyes. We're going to create this massive spy database and network and blah blah blah. And okay, we're spying on our allies. We're spying. They're doing all this crap. We're going to assimilate on everything to NATO. Okay, fine. Once we assimilate everything to NATO and put everything under this Western model of dehumanization, right? This Western model of deindustrialization. What do we do then?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
You said it before. It's like you gave the example of the Borg earlier. These people are literally normalizing, and they're making it very, very plain. They're normalizing nihilism. I mean, there's nothing here. It's just destruction for the sake of destruction, bro.
Yeah.
It's just it's incompetent. It's the worst. At least if Lucifer is going to blow up the world, at least there'll be some style involved. There'll be some sort of there's some sort of diabolical plan, right? Some sort of evil, well thought out, diabolical plan that's thousands of years in the making, right?
Yeah.
This is just morons.
Well, it's up there with the when you look at the end of empires or civilizations more generally, there's usually a lot of grasping at desperation and really bad ideas that become normalized. Like look at the Aztecs in their last few generations. The amount of child sacrifices, whole hundreds of kids at a time were all like ritualistically sacrificed to deal with the angry gods that they were just convinced, like, we have to do this, and then if we do this, then things will be okay. We just need a few more. Okay, that 10,000 kids last month wasn't enough. Okay, let's double it, and then it'll be okay. And they didn't realize the reason why they're in the crisis is because they stopped thinking about the future. They lost the ability, the moral fitness to survive by making certain political choices to become a priesthood, a caste system, to become an empire, subduing their neighbors instead of working in harmony. They made choices, and now they're paying the consequences of their choices. The Easter Island people, same thing. They started with there was like 10, 20,000 people there. Across the Easter Islands at a certain point. It had a pretty advanced culture. They had to be in order to do the transoceanic navigation to get there.
Yeah.
And then what happens? At a certain point, they stop innovating and developing their systems of construction of boats and stuff, and they just start burning all their trees for wood. And then when they're out of trees, they start burning their boats, so they can't get off the islands anymore. And at a certain point, when that's done, well, maybe they could build more big wooden, or not wooden, big stone faces to appease the gods. And God knows what else they're doing along the way. But the population drops by like 95%, and they go into cannibalism by the time Captain Cook arrives. So it's, you've got just societies are much more inclined to very desperate, stupid ideas. And I think the current we will, if we just build more NSA, more surveillance, we'll have, then something will happen. We'll reach a critical mass sort of bifurcation point where then the fourth industrial revolution is just going to happen. And then somehow we're going to have AI, machine mind, capable of finally doing something with all of this data. And then we'll have utopia. If only we could break Russia, China, Iran, and any other country which is trying to like resist our formula, then things will be okay. And it's like every time they do something else to try to like advance their formula, things get worse, and they're still committed to their formula. So it's a mathematical way of looking at the universe, which is insane. It's self-destructive, and people like, right now this week we've got a lot of hot material coming out of a variety of meetings. You got Lukashenko meeting with Putin.
Yeah, that was huge. You want to cover that?
Let's talk about it a little bit.
We'll get into the cardboard cutout meeting the president of the free world, Vladimir Putin. Good.
Yeah, right. No, that's going to be a weird joke, but yeah. the fact though that
after you talk about the Vlad and Biden meeting, I don't know if you know about what happened the first time they met. Did you know about what happened? I could tell you some insider baseball stuff, which I'll mention to you if you. It's remarkable.
Wait on that. Yeah, I would like to hear this.
Yeah, good.
But like Belarus right now is obviously like a very hot spot. The NATO has grown and grown in leaps and bounds over the past 15 years, and we know that that the NATO files really want to get Belarus, Ukraine, and Georgia into their cage. And Belarus is a key player not only in Russia's underbelly, but also with the Eurasian Economic Union. It's a key player there with Kazakhstan and Armenia and Russia. But it's also one of the key zones, the conduit zones of the Belt and Road Initiative, the new Silk Road of China. Like 90% of the goods passing from China to Europe pass through Belarus. So on a multitude of levels, it's so strategic. And Lukashenko just gave a speech after meeting with Putin in where was it? Sochi. Yeah, he was in Sochi. And he went there for a variety of reasons. It wasn't just to deal with this plane that they forced to land in Minsk in order to arrest this little neo-Nazi fake quasi-journalist rabble rouser who's part of this whole like NSA regime change apparatus. Like this kid, I forgot his name. I can't pronounce it, but what's his name? Roman Pratasovich. That's it.
Yeah,
Roman Pratasovich. This kid, he's being treated by the Western press and the U.S. and European establishments are like coming out criticizing Belarus for like arresting this poor freedom fighter, this poor journalist who's just been critical of Belarus's tyrannical regime. It's like, no, if you actually look at what this kid has been up to for the past 6 years, he has been on the front lines fighting, and his father admitted that he's like one of the fighters with the Azov battalion in Donbass and has been since 2014. He's not a journalist. He's working with the U.S. State Department. He took selfies of himself at the State Department saying, "This is the most important time of my life. Now I am a man." After he's like meeting with all of these different officials.
he meets with a bunch of cucks and bitches. And he's so deluded. He's thinking that these idiots in the West and behind these boardrooms are men. And he's like, look, I am now a man because I am among men. What a moron.
No, he's such a chess piece. Not even. Checker
Not
piece.
even. He's a piece of lint.
Yeah,
he's a lint on the chessboard.
Oh my God, it's sad. It's pitiful. But this kid gets, he's part of the opposition organizations that openly get giant support from the CIA, the National Endowment for Democracy. He was a leading figure behind that. So, there was a statement like Lukashenko wanted to make a clear statement that they don't accept this sort of thing. And the fact that, Belarus has been targeted for regime change. The U.S. ambassador to Belarus, I forgot her name, but she's met with on several times the opposition leader who like lost the last elections a few months ago, and now had it left Belarus in exile. But this person is openly calling for regime change. You have the Michael Carpenter, who's with the Atlantic Council, and he runs the Biden Center of Diplomacy in the United States, who is found out to be at the heart of an assassination operation against Lukashenko by the Russian and Belarus intelligence. There's so many things that Putin has made clear. This is a red line. Like, you don't do this. You're not allowed to do this. So Belarus and Russia have a very strategic alliance. And Lukashenko came out after this meeting with Putin saying, if Europe, literally he says, if the West does not want to be our friendly neighbor, so be it. We will turn away from the aging Europe to a rapidly growing Asia. Belarus is ready to become an outpost of new Eurasia. So he's clear, like that's where the future's going. It's
he doesn't want Kamala Harris's solar panels, I assume.
He doesn't want the solar panels. and hopefully, I mean, the difference between Ukraine and Belarus is Ukraine had, you got to respect this guy. Like, he's made mistakes. He's done bad things over the 27 years he's been in there, whatever. Okay. But the fact is, he's been able to maintain a central government without being overthrown where everybody around him has. So you have a much greater George Soros penetration of operations in Ukraine and Georgia, which have been taken down and so many times over. Hungary, I mean, they got Orban, who pushed back against Soros for a bit, but I mean, all of these nations have been absorbed or are being absorbed by NATO and have much more controls by the Western financiers. Belarus he's managed to maintain. Now, you could call him a tyrant. They say he's the last tyrant of Europe, but what does that mean? Like, because he believes, does he not believe in elections? No, there was an election. But they say, because he believes in central governments, you can't believe in the results of any election. Same thing for Putin, or same thing for, Bashar al-Assad. Like, oh yeah, he's a tyrant, butcher Bashar al-Assad. He'd never allow an election. It's like, well, there was just an election and people voted 95% in favor of Bashar al-Assad.
It's rigged.
Yeah.
It's rigged.
So this whole democracy thing, that it's like a cult of democracy that they're using as an excuse to batter countries who don't agree with their ideology into submission. It's not a real thing. And it's like, if we here in the West actually were democracies, okay, we might have the moral qualifications to pass judgment on other nations who are not officially democracies, like China or, you know, Belarus. They're not embracing neoliberalism. Okay, but we're not. Like, we lost our democracy when they killed John F. Kennedy 50 plus years ago, and now, as far as I could see, the things that are making the decisions in policy are it's a small coterie of corporations that are interconnected with financial central banks and intelligence agencies that don't give a shit about anybody or anybody's opinion. They just want to give you the illusion of having a democracy. That's the whole point of liberalism, right? Liberalism is not liberty. What the American founding fathers fought for liberty is not liberalism. Liberalism comes from the Anglo-Dutch Empire. This is people like John Locke, Adam Smith. These were people who all believed in the Enlightenment view of man, that we were just a logical calculating machine with a blank slate and desires, bestial desires that somehow would mystically create value and self-regulation in the marketplace if you just let it all be. Like if nation states were just erased and castrated and everybody was just free to do whatever the hell they want, somehow progress would happen. Just believe. It's effectively a cultish religion. And it was done as an excuse to get nations to just submit and be reabsorbed by the British East India Company. That's why all of these guys like John Locke were working for, he worked for the British the Royal Africa Company. He was a shareholder in the slave trade. This is the guy who we're told was the inspiration for the founding fathers. Maybe a couple of them who were degenerate, sure, but for the most part, no. It happened in spite of assholes, British imperial thinkers like John Locke or Adam Smith. It didn't happen because of them. It happened for a very different set of thinkers who were not told about in school, who believed that human beings had a soul with inalienable rights. You can't justify that we have inalienable rights based on the thinking of a John Locke who believes that we're a blank slate. There's nothing inalienable about that. It's just, if you have rights, it's because somebody powerful gave them to you. That's says the slave owner. So all that to say, like that's liberalism. You get the illusion to have freedom based on the fact that you could buy whatever pizza you want and go to whatever porn website you want to online. That's like your freedom.
It's total freedom. We make it's like what was the book? Snow Crash. Velas likes that book. Snow Crash is a fictional novel. I forgot the name of the author, but he also wrote the Cryptonomicon. And Snow Crash, it's basically a future dystopian America, and there's only a handful of things that we do. Number one on the list, the highest, most elite job is a pizza delivery boy. He's known as the deliverator. And yeah, dude, that's
funny. I want to
you gotta read it.
Crash. Yo, did that have anything to do with the guy who wrote the script for Idiocracy, the 2006 movie?
I'm not sure.
Oh no, that was Mike Judge, right? Who did that? Yeah. Which is also sort of similar movie, right? Like this guy's cryogenically frozen, and then like I don't know how long in the future he's like unfrozen, and he was like a mediocre thinker back in
Neil Stephenson. That's who it is. Neil Stephenson.
That's Snowcraft.
Snow Crash.
Snow Crash. Okay.
Snow Crash. Yeah. It's his name. I'll tell you. Look, here's the thing. Right? He goes. Okay, so Neil Stephenson. Okay, Snow Crash is a novel weaving virtual reality, Sumerian myth, and just about everything in between, with a cool, hip cyber sensibility to bring us to a giga thriller of the information age. In reality, Hero, the protagonist, delivers pizza for Uncle Enzo's Costa Nostra pizzas. The mob winds up, because there's really nothing to do in post-industrial America, because the country's been deindustrialized. So the Sicilian mob, gets in on the pizza business. And so he's got to deliver pizzas to these no-go neighborhoods, these no-go areas in the most dangerous parts, and he's armed with weapons in order to do so. And the other big industrial things in the U.S., of course, are the sex trade and maybe some recycling and trash and stuff. That's it.
Yeah, that's funny. I gotta. All right, that's a pretty interesting story. Yeah, no, I mean, exactly. But that's the thing. Like, you're dealing with the logical. If you logically were to extend the current rate of decay, moral and psychological decay into the future with no crash point, right? Imagine no systemic collapse and things just gradualistically continue to go its natural course that it's moving right now.
Yeah.
That's what you would probably get exactly.
Yeah, I got the
Yeah.
whole entire thing. He goes,
Yeah.
From the opening line of his breakthrough cyberpunk novel, Snow Crash, Neil Stephenson plunges the reader into a not too distant future. It's a world where the mafia controls pizza delivery. The United States exists as a patchwork of corporate franchise city-states, and the internet incarnate as the metaverse. Looks something like last year's hype wouldn't like you to believe that it should. Enter Hero, the hacker, samurai swordsman, and pizza delivery driver.
That guy's having
prophetic, man. This is prophetic.
That guy can have a job at the UN. He's going someplace. I can see him as a foreign policy advisor.
Oh my god.
Yeah. No, it's really yeah. I mean, I was gonna continue on the example of Idiocracy, but people could just Google it and watch it online. It's a funny thing, but essentially it's a sort of same idea where now he's a genius, this guy who was cryogenically frozen and awoken 500 years in the future.
Yeah.
And the world that he woke up to, he is literally a brilliant genius because he can string like 8 words together, but everybody else
is
oh my God. Yeah. And they can't figure out why there's like this famine going on all over the world. And it's a big crisis. And he he's a genius. So he finds himself now the advisor to the government, the US government, who's like an ultimate fighter champion, who's now the president of the United States, who's hired him to do the job of figuring out why there's this food crisis. And then finally, you realize that, well, you've been spraying Gatorade instead of water all over you haven't been using water for the past like 8 generations. Why'd you stop? And you find out that, everyone's like, oh, of course you don't drink water, you drink Gatorade. And that's what they've been spraying on all their crops. And they're like, he's like, why? He's like, because there's electrolytes. And he's like, what's an electrolyte? And they're like, and he's like, why don't we use water? And that's the big solution. But yeah, no, I mean, porn is like it's like everybody. It's like
it is the number one like
healthy normal thing.
No, exactly, and it's the number one thing that is destroying testosterone levels in men everywhere is pornography.
Okay,
alongside all the other chemicals and this, that, and the other. So you want to really clean yourself up. You want to get your T levels as high as possible. Dude, clean up your diet, start eating right, and stop beating off to nonsense. It's just that simple. Okay, so cardboard cutout, shifting gears. Cardboard cutout, the crash test dummy in the White House is going to be meeting the president of the free world. Your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, it doesn't seem like there's anything Putin's going to be talking to. I don't understand. Like, I don't see, as we've talked about, I see a computer program behind Biden as a synthetic persona. So I'm not too sure what Putin will be interacting with. If they are able to squeeze out some form of tension reduction in any way, if Putin can play this in any way to squeeze out some form of reduction of nuclear war threat in some way, God bless him. I hope he can. But I mean, you're not dealing with.
I don't think you should. If you want to look what happened in the last several weeks, man, a couple of major highlights have occurred. Number one, the U.S. out of nowhere, Exceptional Sense said that they're not going to sanction the companies that are involved in Nord Stream 2.
No, yeah,
that was huge. That's huge. Second thing, Newland and Blinky Blinken. Okay, the cookie dispenser of the Maidan. Okay, the cookie dispenser of the Maidan, Victoria Newland. Passing out cookies in the middle of a revolution, the crazy bitch. She and Blinken explicitly has told Zelensky that, hey, we're not going to back you if you go to war with Russia. All of a sudden, they backtrack. We're not going to back you if you were to accelerate into a war with Russia, number one. And number two, we're not going to give you NATO membership. That's a huge setback, right? And third and final thing is all of a sudden, the U.S. has stopped pumping oil in Syria. 3 major things have occurred
while the average, Rush Limbaugh, God rest his soul, he said it best when he coined the term for the average American, Bubis Americanus, right? When these three major geopolitical, geostrategic events that have occurred, and you and I we all know that geopolitics is event-driven rather than time-driven, okay? When these three things occurred, what happened? Bubis Americanus was too busy distracted by UFO disclosure.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And when you think about it, man, that is huge. That is huge. And isn't it amazing that these three events that have occurred, how did they happen? It happened a week and a half after Vladimir Putin's address, where he said, hey, guess what? You know what? We have even more powerful hypersonic missiles. We have and he disclosed this new underwater drone that can literally patrol the oceans for perpetually forever. Yeah. And it's armed with the equivalent of a Sarmat 2 kiloton nuclear warhead that could create a tsunami wiping out the East Coast. And all of a sudden, between that and the new Mach 20 hypersonics, exceptional stands like they've backed off. These are three major fronts: the Middle East, Ukraine, right, and then all of a sudden the sanctions.
No, absolutely. And the Russia-China strategic alliance, the fact that Yang Jiechi met with Nikolai Patrushev as well, at the same time that this meeting is happening with Putin and the different defense CEOs in Russia, as well as Lukashenko. Like, he's meeting all of these things in Sochi. So these different things are happening, and Russia and China have a deep embedded security partnership. Russia has been openly assisting, and I mean, there's probably so many other ways that they've been assisting off the table in ways that we don't necessarily see on the surface for Chinese defense development. We know that they've helped them develop their tech support for early warning systems to be alerted for against a U.S. attack on China. Russia's getting ready to roll out S-500s. China is very interested in this as well. There's new aircrafts, new drones, like you've said, underwater drones that are supersonic, things like the Altius and Orion, systems as well that China is very interested in acquiring, and so many other things that are so far beyond the capabilities, scientific capabilities of anything we've seen coming out of the nutty Western alliance. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of flanking maneuvers that are being introduced and are continuously being unpacked every few days that are just offsetting the entire rules of the game. So they don't know how. They're constantly just flapping away, trying to readjust. Not that long ago, we were on the verge of a nuclear war with Russia over Ukraine. All of a sudden, they pulled back, realized no, they overshot themselves there, and then all of a sudden, they were threatening European governments not that long ago to stop building the Nord Stream 2. All of a sudden, no, shifting of gears. That's not going to work anymore either. So there's so many. They're flailing. They're desperately flailing, and we should take, in a certain sense, a type of empowerment from that. That these gods of Olympus wannabes are actually not as strong as the image that they've been projecting onto the masses over all of these decades. That's good, but at the same time, they're still dangerous as hell, and we don't know. We know that they're absolutely committed to their Borg-like utopian, cube-like structure of assimilation. They're not letting go of that. And are they willing to, cross more lines in their desperation? Maybe they are. I don't see why they would not be. So that's, I have a lot of faith, and I mean, Putin and Xi Jinping and the increasing array of leaders working with that alliance is giving me a lot of hope.
No, they are. And the thing is the Russians and the Chinese, they're not taking the foot off the pedal. No, when it comes to the multipolar war, they're not taking the foot off the pedal when it comes to the Arctic development, the Arctic sea lanes, the Arctic shipping lanes. They're not taking the foot off the pedal on Eurasian integration. They're not taking the foot off the pedal on dollar alternatives. They're not taking the foot off the pedal on trade. They're not taking the foot off the pedal on energy, on human rights. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on and on.
Space exploration too, right? We're talking Russia, China together, and China is committed to mining helium-3 from the moon for fusion, like we were talking about at the beginning.
Bingo.
Best fuel source ever for fusion power, helium-3. Why? Helium-3 does not release any neutrons. So the neutrons is what destroy over time the elements making up your containment unit, because they cause transmutations, they cause a weakness. If you can use helium-3, which we don't have on the Earth in any significant form, but it's all over the moon. If you can start bringing truckloads of that back from the moon, one truckload can power the Earth at its current needs for a full year, let alone a continuous flow with no neutron emissions. I mean, it's incredibly powerful stuff. We're talking about a complete changing of the chessboard. It's changing the game. It's not changing the rules of chess. It's just creating a completely new game that didn't exist before. And that's really the only thing that can stop this oligarchical parasitical Borg thing is creativity. The Borg only have a form of bestial logic of eating the weak, but they don't have they don't have access to creativity. Human machines, or humans that think like machines, can't access nonlinear leaps of creative thought, which require a feeling of love, right?
Yeah.
If you have to have that emotional infrastructure of that higher set of sentiments to sustain the quality of mindful actions needed in a Max Planck or in an Einstein or in anybody who is of that higher ordered creative character in science. And they're just not able to produce any of that. They can only produce human machines.
Yep. Exactly right. Man, closing comments, brother. Like, what else you wanna touch base? What else on the radar?
Oof. I mean, there's so many things, like it's really interesting. That's one interesting thing about living at the end of the collapse of a system, is that there's always so many things to keep the mind occupied. So that's good in a weird way. But I mean, at the same time, people have to really, in other ways, I think when I'm interacting with my friends, my readers online, I get a lot of emails every day. I spend a lot of time on the phone. It's crazy. But the thing that I find myself increasingly needing to do is to get across to people that they need to slow their minds down in a certain way and be more qualitative with the time that they spend thinking about things and researching, rather than just trying to immerse yourself in everything going on, because it's just like an information overload spectrum. And you can end up walking out of this kind of dizzy, exhausted, after going through the news cycles on Zero Hedge and RT and just like processing everything, without really having a usable, functional knowledge that empowers you to do or understand anything in a deeper way that allows you to improve your situation. So my point is, I always try to tell people, like, slow down, read something qualitative, like read a Plato dialogue. Just sit back, reserve 2 or 3 hours, sit down and work through with a notebook and take notes of your thoughts as they're moving in Plato's mind, and get develop greater capacities like that, capacity build mentally. And you'll find that going back to the information will be a qualitatively different experience the more you do things like that recreationally. And you'll find at first it might seem heavy lifting, but it gets easier. It's more natural to do than just sort of numbing yourself with Netflix or something like that, which is what usually is our go-to place after you binge watch. And I've binge watched my fair share of things, but I know as well, right, that ultimately I could have spent that time doing other things that pay off better. So I would just say that, one thing we've been doing, and your reader or listeners know this, is as far as our Rising Tide Foundation project, I've been curating with my wife lectures every week.
Yes. And folks, it's important for you to sign up for these classes. They're free. They're available. They got an amazing Telegram group. Join these. And of course, Matt's Substack and all that. I mean, you want a geostrategic, geoeconomic, geopolitical, my God, a master class. I mean, this is the guy to do it. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, it's people just need to send an email to info@risingtidefoundation.net. We got classes from history, science, philosophy, you name it, and a lot of interactivity too from people all over the world. So that's something we're encouraging. Study groups, reading groups, geometry groups. We got a group up here in Montreal building a giant telescope and observatory in the form of a giant dodecahedral. Anyway, we got a video on that at the top of my website.
Yeah, that's amazing. I've seen the vid. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. We even got like a giant space allocated on a big mountain far away from light pollution that's going to be set up. That's it right there. So, there's all sorts of initiatives that can be taken creatively that are just good for the soul. They're just good. They're good things to do in a world of fucked up inside outness. that have permanent value. So I just encourage people to make a donation, get on board, come to the events, and just think about your own mind in a qualitatively deeper way, knowing that it's something that the Empire has been working very hard for many generations to obscure and keep from you, is access to how your mind actually is designed to work naturally in a healthy, happy state. Ben Franklin understood this. You know, great leaders that we respect and love, if you read their original writings, they tapped into this understanding of what it is that they are, that the Empire really hates and fears. So be more of what the Empire fears.
Yeah. And read, educate yourself. And this is a great way. The Rising Tide Foundation is amazing in terms of the resources going back. I mean, what you and Cynthia have compiled, man, it literally is a modern day Library of Alexandria. Literally is.
Yeah.
Amazing articles.
Yeah,
everything.
Well, thanks. Yeah, thank you. And you know, like the oligarchy wants to wipe out history, right? Like, we know that's all they can do is destroy anything good, because they know on some deep level, some essential level, they know. That's why they had to destroy the Library of Alexandria.
Yep.
Because they know that it's incompatible with what they need to justify their system of cancerous, parasitical, you know, blahness. It's blah. It's a system of blah, of boringness. But it's incompatible with this other thing that humans do. So they have to just wipe it out and pretend that it didn't exist. But no, I mean, yeah, it's actually, the universe is a much more interesting, happy, good, beautiful place than a lot of people have been led to believe. And it's not compatible with AI.
No,
AI
is not.
Yeah.
AI is a stupid marketing term, folks. There's no, you know, a lot of us are conditioned to think it's going to be like Skynet, and it's going to be this sentient, self-aware machine with complex emotional thoughts and this, that, and the other. No, it's not. AI is just an algorithm, and it is flawed because of the person who programs it. Now, the algorithm could learn and pick up data and process the data, but it's still a very binary, not a multilinear, but a binary way of input and output. All it is. Now, for those who are not knowing or are not learned of this technology, they'll literally think, "Wow, it's alive." You know, I mean, you hear when people first interact with Siri on Apple or Google Assistant, you actually think it's like a real intellect. It's not.
Yeah,
it's just an algorithm.
Yeah.
Okay, and the algorithms are flawed by the person who programs it. Okay, so there's no substitute for the human brain, and this is why they want you stupid and they want you believing in garbage like, "Oh my God, the AI." And space aliens and all the other nonsense and all that other garbage that goes along with it. Anywho, Matt, we're at the end of the show, brother.
All right. So we've had our old man moments.
Yes, we did. We did. And folks,
today.
And we will be back
all right
next week, next Tuesday on the Geostrategic Hour with Matthew Arrett. I'm the Gorilla, and I'm back. I've been augmented by the AI itself. He is CJ on the bottom, the producer extraordinaire, making sure the broadcast is coming out crispy and clean. So check out Matthew Arrett's website over at thecanadianpatriot.com, as well as the Rising Tide Foundation.net. And with that being said, we're over and out. Take it away, CJ.